Welcome back to the channel. My name is Douglas, and I've been a worship leader or on a worship team here in Maine for the better part of a decade and a half. And I started out on piano and then kind of moved in, started incorporating synthesizers and keyboards into the mix. And now I kind of do both with the Nord Stage 3. I'll have the piano, then I'll mix in some synthesizer. So I've got just a synth pad here. And that gives me kind of the ability to have some dynamics in those sounds. And I found that the Nord Stage 3 has really helped me when it comes to playing on the team, up in church, and just being able to kind of bring those dynamics in and out without needing to reach up to another keyboard or anything like that. It's just some layered sounds. What you're hearing here is a sound that I kind of configured in the Nord Stage 3. I'll put a link in the description below where I talk about that sound and how I made that if you want to kind of replicate this sound on your keyboard. But in today's video, I want to talk about chord progressions and some common ones that I use in a worship setting. So I'm going to use the song How He Loves as my example song here. And the last part of this song kind of goes like this. And oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. And as you're ending a song, a lot of times, unless you're transitioning to another song, that kind of has a different scenario to it because you've got to have a transition maybe between keys. But in this case, let's just use this example of the song is ending and we're going into a time of prayer or a time where someone's going to come up. Maybe it's the pastor or someone else that's going to come up and do some reading or speak over the music. So what we try to do in a church setting is to kind of facilitate the spirit of worship. And the one way that we can do this is to continue the music and not have hard breaks and dead space in the mix or in kind of the atmosphere. So the way that we can do this as the song ends, oh, how he loves us, how he loves us so. And what we can do here is we can kind of throw in some different chord progressions. And that's what I really want to focus on in this video is what chord progressions make sense after a song and what are some of my favorites that I use. So the first one I'll throw out there, and probably the most common, is to use the chord progression of the song you just played. So in this case, the chord progression of the chorus is a 1, which is in the key of C, would be the C chord. And then an A minor, which would be a 6. And then a 5, which would be a G. And then the 4, which would be the F. And oh, how he loves us so. So we can use that chord progression, how he loves us so. So we're kind of ending the song part on the 4 or the F chord. And then we can kind of go back into that chorus chord progression again. The C, the 6, and then the 5, 4. And one additional piece to this is we can use what I consider kind of fill-in notes. So notice as I'm playing this, I'm not just playing the standard 1 chord, and then a 6 chord, and then a 5, and then a 4. Those would be your standard chords, but what I'm doing is I'm putting a little movement into it. And then I'm walking between the notes with my right hand with some of those like little melody pieces. So and as you play and as you gain experience, you're going to kind of figure out what sounds good. Obviously, this also comes down to some personal preference. So I like to keep movement in there. Sometimes the song just calls for straight notes that you're just playing. But even in that case, I'm throwing in some extra notes to try to just kind of fill in. And again, as you play, you kind of learn what notes sound good with each other. And I am not well-versed in theory or anything like that. I've just been playing long enough that playing by ear, I can kind of hear what works well together. So that's the first one, and probably the most common chord progression that I use is the chord progression of the song I just played. Another one that I do a lot of the times is an alternating 1 and a 1 sus. So what this sounds like without any pad in it is just, let's take that song, How He Loves, as our example again. How He Loves Us All. So we end on that F for the 4, and then we're just going to go to a rocking 1 and 1 sus. That's the 1. That's a 1 sus. Just a couple of measures on each one. Depending on the tempo of the song, you can kind of vary that. And as the prayer gets longer, as the talking gets longer, it starts to get really repetitive. For example, if you're doing a 1 and a 1 sus. So you'll notice what I'm doing with my right hand is I'm throwing some additional notes in there to kind of play around while my root is still 1 and 1 sus. I'm throwing in those extra notes. And I might pick a little bit of the melody of the song we just sang and throw that in there. You'll notice the da-da-da-da is a little bit kind of pulled from How He Loves. So that is the second one that I'll use quite a bit. And then I'll kind of extend that and I'll throw a 6 in there as well. So we got the 1. We'll go to the 1 sus. And if I want to kind of bring in some extra emotion, we can drop to that 6, which is our A minor chord. And then maybe to a 5, and then back to the 1, 1 sus. So that would be the third one, is extending that 1, 1 sus and adding a 6 and a 5 in there. Now we could also, instead of doing a 1 and a 1 sus, what I'll do a lot of the time is go 1, 4, 6, 5, which is a very common chord progression, but that would sound like this. So there you go, another chord progression that's really simple to kind of go to and provides a bit more movement and emotion in there. So that's one thing you kind of want to play with, is the emotions you're trying to portray with the music you're playing. So obviously, if the focus is on something else, like the prayer or the word that's being read, you don't want the focus to be here. So if you're really busy, that's too busy to be underneath someone trying to talk. And what's going to happen is the sound guy's just going to pull you down because it's not going to sound good. So keep it simple and really kind of keep those chords just really simple with a little bit of those fill-in notes there. The last one that I use commonly is starting, instead of on the 1, is to start up on the 4. So, how He loves us all. And then we kind of stay there. And then we'll go to the 5. And what you can kind of do here is build. So then we're going to go to the 6. We're going to go to the 1. and then back to the 4. So this is a 4, 5, 6, 1, 4, 5, 6, 1. And this works really well if maybe there's a part of the prayer that is kind of building in the dynamics of what's being spoken, or part of the word that is powerful, and you want to start to kind of build a little bit of emotion around that. And you have to be careful because you don't want to manufacture a spirit of worship, but what we can do is help facilitate that by the way that we play, the dynamics that we bring in, by not being too busy, but being in the background allows the spirit to kind of move, and you're there just as a facilitator. So again, what we're going to do here is we're going out of that song and we're going to build this just ever so slightly. How he loves us all. How he loves us. How he loves us. There you go, 5 different chord progressions that I use a lot. And the first one, just to recap, is using the chord progression of the song you just played. A lot of times that's going to work really well, and I usually pick the chord progression that's from the chorus or from the bridge. Most often, those two are the best for filling in after the fact. So again, on How He Loves, I was using the chorus chord progression in that first example. Some songs, the bridge has a really nice chord progression as well. So keep that in mind. Second was our simple 1-1 sus alternations. The next was 1-1 sus 6 5, and then we had a 1-4 6 5. And finally, we had a 4-5-6-1. So hopefully that gives you some direction, some guidance into some chord progressions that you can use. I'll call them worship chord progressions, but worship is really more of a action and an attitude than it is a noun to describe something, but we tend to use that all the time, right? So whether it's your praise team or your worship team, hopefully this gives you some ideas in terms of what you can do after a song is kind of ending, where you can go with those chords, where you can go with those chord progressions, and you can kind of mix and match them as well. Just make sure that as you're playing with a team, that you're communicating during practice or rehearsal to say, hey, after this song, what are we going to do for a chord progression to kind of hold this out while someone comes up and prays or someone on the team prays? So keep that in mind. Communicate with each other. That way, you know, Bob isn't playing one chord progression and you're playing another. So make sure you're all on the same page. That's going to, again, continue to help facilitate that spirit of worship. And so if you've got any questions around the Nord Stage 3, around playing on your worship team, anything I talked about in this video, throw those down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer those. If you found this video helpful, smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks for watching. Stay inspired and keep making that music.